Hello, everyone, and you are very welcome to a new episode of the Irish NFL show. It is the Divisional Round preview, and it's sponsored by Cassidy Travel. I am Khristina. We are missing Calla tonight and also Mark, but we do have Brian and Colum with us here. And while we're talking about Mark, we've had a message in from the Pats Nation crew who are missing Mark and are wondering about his safety after yesterday. We've heard reports that he's dazed and confused after appearing at the Levi Stadium wearing a 49ers jersey. And the Pats Nation's team has asked to contact them using the hashtag Pats Nation or hashtag TB12Love with any information you may have about Mark. So, without further ado, let's get on to this weekend of amazing football that we witnessed. Brian, talk us through Saturday night's first game, which was obviously the Jags against the Chiefs.
Khristina, you said it was the preview show. I wish it was the bloody preview show, and we wouldn't be where we are today after what I saw on Saturday night. But anyway, we'll get to that one in a minute. Chiefs game. I said it'd be 40-20. It was 27-20. I wasn't far off on the Jags number. Look, the Chiefs kicked off like we thought they would. They had the week off, 4 seed, come out all guns blazing. Mahomes looked on fire. Kelsey looked unstoppable. Caldwell was playing zone, which was essentially perfect for the Chiefs. It allows Kelsey to get in these lovely positions, and immediately the connection is there between the both of them. And I know the Jags, responded very well with the touchdown immediately with Cork. But then obviously the landscape of the game changed with Mahomes' injury, and I know we're going to get into a little bit of talk around this weekend's games later in the show. But I mean, the whole game changed there, and I don't know, there's a sense, and I think even more so as the days have gone on when the Jags fans really take a step back and really look at this game as a whole, and even the Jags, coaching staff, it's one that got away because I couldn't understand the mindset in the second half where they didn't really continuously blitz. I thought they would have went after Mahomes quite extensively because why wouldn't you? If it's a make or break type of game, you don't get the result, you're out for the season, and then you have to lick your wounds for 6 or 7 months. With Mahomes' injury, high ankle sprain, and Colum was right on Saturday evening. He put up on social, he put up on our group that Andy Reid was doing him as a service by taking him out of the game. But I don't know about this. Like they say, he went in at half time and he did all the checks. He comes back. It's been confirmed as a high ankle sprain. He shouldn't have played in the second half. I understand the reasons why he did. It's again same scenario for them. They lose, the season is over. But it's for me. I thought the Jags should have won this game. It was a great opportunity with Mahomes' injury. And Henny came in and had that great drive. But even with that drive, that was more run orientated. They allowed the run game to go up and down the field on him in that drive. Henny had 5 for 7, 23 yards. That's kind of washed away by the fact that he threw the touchdown to Kelsey. But even on that drive, they didn't really adjust. They continued to play zone. I thought they would have went man to man and made Henny try beat him. It made it very easy for them on that drive. Chiefs do what they always do. They find ways to win this game. But I think the biggest question mark, and it'll probably be the biggest conversation this week, and it really shouldn't be. It really should be about two great quarterbacks going up against each other in a great championship game, a repeat of last year's game, and whether the Chiefs can finally break this hoodoo, which the Bengals have had over them. But unfortunately, I think it's going to be all about Mahomes and this injury leading into the game all week long.
You know what? You've actually just touched on that. And the same injury happened to Mahomes in 2019. And Andy Reid did come out this afternoon and did say that Mahomes will play. He's been working on his injury so far today, and he's adamant that he's going to play. And it's nowhere near as bad as last year. Colum, what was your thoughts on this?
To me, I can see, I suppose, in ways what Brian is talking about in a missed opportunity. But although the score was close, I never felt the Jags were really in this. It felt the Chiefs always had it. And even with Mahomes out, and Andy Reid, I mean, Brian talks rightly about the 98-yard play. And that to me was just an example of Reid's genius. It was also an example of, I think, where the Jags made huge errors, right? Because and we talked about this a little bit yesterday morning, Khristina. Travis Kelsey is the Chiefs' most potent weapon. And go back and watch that play. He is in acres of space. I mean, he had the type of space that the Cowboys were hoping they were going to get on that final play. He could have lateraled it if he wanted to. But that was telling. And to me, that was the mistake. and Brian has touched on that as well, but that I would take away Travis Kelce, take away their most potent weapon. And yeah, if they go to Valdez Scantling, if they go to Juju, if they go somewhere else, then that, you know, you live with it, because ultimately you got beaten by somebody else. But you look at the way in which Pacheco was able to get yards on the ground. I think he was, he was averaging nine yards. It was kind of crazy, his ability to do that. And it just felt, I suppose, the Jags are, I mean, what a year for them to turn around, to go from back-to-back first number one overall picks to where they ended up and being competitive. And I did expect them to be competitive. But I think ultimately the Chiefs have, a better roster, the more experienced team for that sort of situations, and ultimately that told in the end. But we are, a couple of weeks away from Calvin Ridley being able to apply to be reinstated. The Jags have a QB who's still on a rookie deal. So I imagine, they should still have money to put around him. And they have a very, very competent head coach. So, even where they are now in comparison to where they, lost to the Patriots in 2018, I think they're in an infinitely better position. But the Chiefs are just, they're so good at what they do. And in order to beat the Chiefs, you have to be at your very best. You have to hope, you can exploit some weaknesses in the Chiefs, and you have to have a bit of luck. I think, and look, not that this impacted the outcome of the game, it didn't. But one of the reasons home field advantage tends to be so important is you do get more decisions. And the Chiefs did get more decisions than the Jags the other night. It didn't impact on the outcome of the game in the slightest, but it is worth noting that is one of the reasons why you want home field advantage. You get the crowd, you get, the decisions, they tend to go your way. But the Chiefs, 5th straight home, like this is not even like on the road. This is the 5th straight home AFC game. It is a phenomenal achievement by Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes ever since he came in and took over as starter. That has been the case. So yeah, just we'll discuss the other games, but I think next week's game at Arrowhead is going to be, or should be, a brilliant game.
Brian, you've got a point to add there.
Yeah, it was just more so after the game, like all the scrutiny, all the talkers around Mahomes and the injury, and then as well as that, in fairness, we were giving a lot of credit to Kelce on the 18 catches, but what I felt was kind of glossed over was the importance of the Chiefs' defense, because without that red zone fumble and then the immediate interception on the next drive, I mean, they were turning points in the game. If points go in there, brings the Jags back into the game by 3 points, who knows what happens then. So that's significant. And then just to touch on Colum's point around the referee, I do agree with him, and more so around the I don't think it was as bad as other games, but that game in particular. But again, this is back to something we spoke about when we had Dean Blandino on a couple of times during the off-season and last season. It's the fact that come to playoffs, they essentially take different referees from all the various different teams, teams as in NFL refereeing teams that all have the same game each week, and they put them all together. And it's a bit muddled, and it doesn't seem to work. And for me, it's never worked, but yet the NFL continue to do it. And I think at some stage they have to consider going and just using the structure of the regular season as opposed to swapping people out and having different refereeing teams.
I love how you touched on that, because these are supposed to be the best of the best within the league itself, and we've questioned them every time over the last few weeks, and even this season. I don't recall a season where we haven't questioned the refs' decisions as much as what we have this year, for sure. But onwards and upwards, and the Chiefs are going ahead. So let's get on to brass tacks. And Brian, I'm really sorry to bring this one up, but we do have to cover the Giants and the Eagles, because the Eagles did roll the Giants with a 268 rush yards, and they're on the way to the NFC Championship berth. Sorry, I know that wasn't in the notes, but I had to say it. It really was a one-sided game. It was 38-7 to the Eagles. This one was really just blown away. I can't even say it anymore, Brian, because I just keep looking at you. 28 unanswered points in the first half as they marched straight on. And Jalen Hurts was back, looking really healthy, especially after that shoulder injury. I did question what type of Jalen Hurts were we going to see. It was one of those big points I brought up. And wow, I was proven wrong. Colum, can I get your thoughts first, and we'll give it then to Brian for the full-on post-mortem.
I mean, look, ultimately, a really good season for the Giants ends in disappointment. Brian Dable squeezed every last ounce, I think, out of the roster, but they ran into what is one of the best rosters in the entire league, and we're gonna discuss obviously next week's game in our preview show later in the week. But I think mouthwatering to me that game, I think the Eagles have people, and we discussed this yesterday a little bit, Khristina. People kind of got a little bit carried away with a couple of meaningless losses towards the end of the season and kind of forgot what we had seen from the Eagles over the course of the previous 80% of the year. I thought it was a really bad matchup as well for the Giants. I mean, the Eagles have 4 of the top 5 rushing games this year. 2 of those came against the Giants, and they have the ability to attack your weaknesses and exploit your weaknesses. And ultimately, that's what it came down to. The Giants, we know they've been kind of pulling guys off the practice squad. They've been doing what they can. But the Eagles, talked about this, the Eagles can act, I suppose, for other teams who aren't in the playoffs. The Eagles can act as something of a template. You can turn the ship around pretty quickly. Sometimes you have to make really tough decisions in order to do that. Obviously, you need luck to go your way. But the Eagles were in a right mess following their Super Bowl win. The wheels really came off with Carson Wentz, with Doug Peterson. They moved on. They moved quickly. And look at them now, and it won't matter how good the 49ers are. Nobody is going to look forward to going in to Philadelphia to take on this Eagles team.
I think Colum summed it up very well. He made a lot of points that I was going to make. That once I was very confident in the Giants winning last week against Minnesota. I said during the week, I think even friend of Colum's who was on social media, I said we're into overachieving territory now, and I didn't pick them. I didn't get carried away because I knew the reality of the situation was the Eagles are far superior. And Colum was right around the model he looked at, and Joe Shane referred to it this evening in his end of season press conference. The Giants fans may not like it, but this is the model that most teams need to achieve and work towards, which is what the Eagles have done. The Giants are probably further down the road in which they thought they would be, and it's been a great season. But there's some negative stuff that's come out of the game after, and certainly around the level of effort from some players on the defence, which is probably a bit disingenuous, and it's come across in a number of Giants podcasts that they felt that they downed tools of 14-0. I thought some things were badly coached, which is kind of strange for me to say that, Brendan, when how good Dable has been at the start of the season, like deferring and giving them the ball. And whilst they've done that all season long, you're only giving them the advantage immediately if they go down and score a touchdown. Second drive, gone for it on 4th and 8 at the halfway line. That's a punt all day scenario. So I have understood where he was coming from, and we have to be aggressive. We have to try and match these teams. But anyway, look, I'm nitpicking. It's a great win for the Eagles. I felt they would win. The only question mark, like yourself, Khristina, what I said on the show last Thursday was which Eagles are we going to see, because it's a bit of an unknown quantity over the past month, and Colum has rightly alluded to meaningless losses. We saw the real Eagles on Saturday night. Hurts looked back to himself, and it's going to be a massive test for the 49ers this weekend. 49ers have been bullying teams. I don't think they bullied the Cowboys last night. We'll get to that game shortly, and I think it could be the opposite way around this weekend in terms of who gets bullied. But be interesting to see. Great game ahead, as Colum touched on. 2 great championship games. But for the Giants to go back, lick their wounds, still a lot of work to do for next season. But I think there's a reality check there. They've done well, but they're still way off the mark in terms of really competing to be in the really finishing line towards the end of the season.
My thoughts and condolences with you, but I do think this is something that we've seen though as well this year, is that Giants are really kind of getting themselves, they're building themselves up, and they do want to challenge, and I think they're becoming more, the challenger next year. It's something that you guys will work on obviously through the year as well, especially your offense. Right, let's get into it, because last night we seen some really good games in Buffalo. we were looking at the Bengals, at the Bills. It was a snowy one in Buffalo, which saw ice-cool Joe Burrow with 2 drives from the get-go for the Bengals to get out on an early 14-0 lead. Joe Mixon couldn't be stopped in the run game. Burrow found the players open at ease at times. I think it's really cool about this game was that the Houday Nation just silenced Bills Mafia at home. And if you look back and you listen to a lot of the game last night, you just keep hearing who they. Brian, what was your thoughts on this game?
I was one of the few, I think, that was confident on the Bengals, and they came out, they came out all guns blazing. Like the first drive is 6 plays, touchdown. The second drive is 10 plays, touchdown. And they had one thing as well, which the Bills haven't had all season, which is a run game. And when you've got a run game, as good as Joe Burrow is, you've got a run game that can balance an offense. I mean, it got to the stage where the 2 safeties, the strong safety and the weak safety, didn't know whether to stick or twist, and they were coming up trying to stop the run game, and they still couldn't do that because Mixon was going, and P9 in fairness, they were going for an average of like 8.9 yards a run, and it only allowed it just freed up Chase, and it freed up Irwin, who's had a really good season, the tight end, and Hayden Hurst. And early on in the game, Boyd was into, he kind of went away, but they were finding so much space. And for an offensive line that has been missing 3 players, and even another player, I think Cadis, got injured during the game, they had so much composure and so much time for Burrow. And it was quite the opposite on the other side. Josh Allen wasn't getting much time, and he looked very flustered throughout the course of the game. There was a number of holes, some that weren't given, some that were. Like their offensive line really self-destructed last night, and they had no run game. Allen, I think, only went for something in the region of 34 yards. They were very poor. I don't know if the last month in the enormity, what happened in that game, which was called off, got to them. They didn't play very well against the Patriots, and the following game they kind of got away with that one with 2 special team touchdowns. They were poor then in the playoff game against the Dolphins, and last night there was nothing there for them. And the Bengals are the hottest team in the NFL right now, and you know, it's some game this weekend, and you'd have to argue they should be the favourites. They're not, but they should be. And I think for the Bills, they're really going to have to go away, lick their wounds. But I think they've got to get this run game sorted. They can't continue to rely on Josh Allen continuously game after game. And we spoke last week on the show about how they were really strong in the first quarter. They kind of muffled through the second and third quarter, came back strong in the fourth quarter. And it was just a disjointed offense last week despite the high points. And it was similar again last night. And I don't know if, and again, maybe we're overreacting, but I don't know if all is well within the Bills camp, because we saw Diggs, and I'm not necessarily talking about last night's reaction at the end of the game, but more so like it was Thanksgiving Day. He was very animated on the sideline with the head coach, and the head coach settled him down. I know he gave a tough time to Case Keenum when he was in Minnesota, but I just think there's some stuff there that they have to clean up in this offseason. They'll probably see it as a missed opportunity, but the Bengals completely dominate this game. I don't think at any stage, once they hit 14-0, did anybody really expect the Bills to come back and be strong and win the game.
Colum, what was your thoughts?
I'd echo a lot of what Brian has said. I like, for me, the concern was the Bengals O-line, and that I thought there was too much change there. I doubted them. I could not have been more wrong. Was talking, I think, to Tip the Bengals beforehand, and was talking about the worry around Mixon carrying the ball. I said I knew that would be important. No, he was confident, but he said, don't have to worry. Even if we don't have a run game, we'll be fine. But they did have a run game. I mean, Brian has talked about that, the difference that in that, and they ran the ball 34 times. And, I think the Bills had 19 carries maybe. Obviously, they were playing catch up, but consider, like, you had a guy making his NFL debut. They were phenomenal. The vast majority of us. Brian was in a small minority of people who picked the Bengals. And the reason was not anything, because we have seen, I talked about how special a player Burrow is, but I just didn't believe in the line. I thought that the Bills, on offense, they looked like they were moving through treacle. Like, everything was a struggle. Even when they were making up yards, everything was so difficult. And on defense, the game plan was just terrible. It really, really was. Leslie Frazier called an awful game. And really only Matt Milano was the only one to kind of come out of it with a huge amount of credit. If it hadn't been for him, the game would have been, score would have been much, much worse. For the Bills, it's a season where I suppose like a lot of talk coming in around the 13 seconds. Then they go in, they defeat the Chiefs. But after, Von's injury, everything kind of seemed to, and then they were having to play away from home. And then there was the Damar Hamlin situation. It was great to see him in the stands, but all of that takes a toll. And kind of, I suppose I'm interested to see, do they make any changes, or do they just try to run this back again? But I think that they have to figure something out, because it's going on a number of years now without a run game. And last night you saw the pressure that Josh Allen was under. You saw that the Bengals did a great job in terms of what they called in terms of defense. They brought up the D-backs. I think Mike Hinton had, was it 5? And he got to the QB 4 times on 5 pressures. I mean, that is phenomenal. And the right tackle for the Bills was in all sorts of trouble last night. Josh Allen just didn't have time. Again, you saw certain decisions, and Bengals fans and others talked about it, sometimes, again, playing at home. But the Bills got them, the fumble or what, and obviously the touchdown. But that's again playing at home. But the Bengals are that good that they were able to overcome all of that. So it's certainly mouth-watering in the AFC, and we'll come to the last game. But I think what we have a real situation this year where it is the 4 best teams remaining. I think that is very clear that these are not, the semifinals truly are the 4 best teams in the NFL.
I just wanted to make a quick point on Zach Taylor, because he has had his criticism, and he was criticised after the Super Bowl last year in terms of his play calling. But it's very evident. I mean, some of the coverage last night was great in terms of going into the dressing room. You see him talking to all the players, handing out the game balls. But he came out in the press conference last night and he kind of alluded to the NFL, and all the talk all week was around the amount of tickets sold for the potential game on the neutral venue in Atlanta. And he said, "I'm sorry to the NFL. I keep seeming to be screwing up their plans with all the logistical people." And then obviously we saw Joe Burrow's great comment about having the issue, the refunds. It was all the talk throughout the course of the week. I think a lot of the neutrals wanted to see the Bills and Chiefs play each other again on a neutral site with a kind of a college type bowl type feel about it, where all these games are played on neutral venues. But the Bengals have spoiled that party, and like right now, if they were to win on Sunday and be in the Super Bowl 2 years in a row, I wouldn't call it a dynasty. You got to start winning Super Bowls, but like I don't think it's as good as, and I know Colin picked them to go to playoffs, so I didn't. As good as we thought they'd be towards the back end of the season, I don't know if anybody really felt they'd still be strong enough to return to the Super Bowl. Obviously, it's a big opportunity on Sunday for them, especially with the injury. And if they get there, they're going to come up against a very strong Niners or a very strong Eagles side, but it wouldn't be against the Rams a possibility that they could beat either of them on the day in Arizona.
I want to get to an interesting question which came in from Fred, who is a long-time watcher, viewer, listener of the show, and also a Dallas fan. And we're going to get to you soon, Fred, trust me. But he asked, Colum, do you think the Bills are on a downward slope now?
I think they need to make some changes and tweaks. I think last year the feeling was after that 13 seconds, that was a bounce of the ball. That was a poor decision to go squib kick and to give it up. But I spoke to Nate Geary a couple of weeks ago, and he obviously covers the Bills, and he was quite vocal last night that he thinks maybe it's time to really look at Leslie Frazier, but it's difficult because Leslie Frazier has been so good right in the regular season, but ultimately last year, against the Chiefs, when they needed to get the stop, they didn't do it, and then in last night's game, you had the Von Miller injury. That definitely played an impact. They really struggled to get to the QB without him. But once you get to the postseason, you have got to. I mean, look at pretty much, you know, all of these games. Over the past couple of days, sacks made such a difference when you consider what Frank Clark and Chris Jones were able to do, what Hassan Reddick was able to do. We've talked about what the Bengals were able to do last night. They brought pressure in different ways. And obviously, look at the last game, and we'll get to it, you had two really strong defenses. I think that the Bills need to look at it and reassess. But the problem that they have is this: you're now in a situation where contracts, you know, start really, the Josh Allen's contract really begins to kick in. And we're looking at I suppose, a situation. We've talked about this on the show previously. It is so difficult to win a Super Bowl when your quarterback accounts for more than about 15% of the cap. Once you get above that, that is a huge issue because it begins to eat into what you can do. And when you consider what quarterbacks are going for, you know, right now and the contracts they are getting, Patrick Mahomes' deal seems all the sweeter for the Chiefs. But I do think that what the Bills need to do is they have to do something, right? I don't believe you can run it back. I don't think this was just a case of, you know, missing Vaughn. I think that they need to freshen things up.
Brian.
Just a Colum's point on the salary cap. I read a great quote today. You can never overpay for great, but you'll always overpay for good. And that's ultimately where the problem is in this league. There's only a handful of really great quarterbacks. And, you know, those quarterbacks can be paid all the money in the world and they'll get you over the hump. And they'll disguise a number of issues. And as good as Josh Allen is, he can disguise ultimately some of the biggest issues which they have, even offensively, in terms of their run game and stuff. We'll see how they go in terms of when it comes to free agency and how aggressive they can be. Yeah, look, that's a valid one as well. I called it out earlier in the season to Colum kind of chuckled away at my comment around how quickly David was able to address the issues in terms of turnovers and fumbles with with Daniel Jones. And the numbers were very similar. Josh Allen's fourth year, David got hold of him, strangled the life out of him, but Josh Allen has gone back to a turnover machine this season. I don't know if he's trying to overdo it at times. I think he is. I think he feels the pressure and the enormity of having to try win in Buffalo, and it's led to some really poor decision making. I remember the Jets game which they lost, the Vikings game. That will have to be looked at as well during this off season.
It's interesting you mentioned that because we just had a comment in saying that Allen hasn't been the same since his injury and he's too much of a hero ball. Do you think that's why he's had so many turnovers this year?
I think he feels I think the pressure is on him. I wouldn't say it's a one-man show because they've got some great players in Diggs, Gabe Davis, Knox. They've got all the players offensively. But like Colum's already called out about the defense side of things, which Nate Geary expressed his concern on. But if you're in games where your defense isn't helping you out and allowing teams to put up 34, 28, 29 points, you're in a position where you have to make sure you're putting up 34 on average. And for a long time during the season, that was okay and it was working. But when you get to this time of year where you're playing the heavyweights, it's not going to continue. Like we saw a couple of years ago, they tried to go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs in the championship game and they couldn't live with the Chiefs. So I just feel he puts too much pressure on himself, and maybe the coach needs to address that as well because it can't be all on him.
I think, Brian, part of that is the lack of the run game. Like if you can, he's constantly trying to force everything. Whereas, again, when you consider the rest of the teams who are left, you know, they all obviously have great quarterbacks, but they all have the ability. The Chiefs, even with Mahomes injured, were able to get their run game going. And that's really important because your quarterback isn't going to be able to be lights out every single week. It doesn't matter who they are. And sometimes they need, even if it's a quarter or a half, to just get themselves sorted. But it has felt like, and I think Brian is right, that Josh Allen has felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I suppose the more time went on, the more he has kind of the talk about team of destiny, et cetera, and it's kind of weighed him down. And even, you know, the Bengals were able to maybe rattle him a little bit. You saw Jesse Bates when he went in on the touchdown, he knocked the ball deliberately out of his hands. I think Josh Allen is a fantastic quarterback. I think the gifts that he has and his ability to run the ball, you can harness those in really unique ways. But nobody can do it all on their own. So a big off season for the Bills.
Brian, you were going to say something. I'm not going to interrupt you.
No, I was like, on the trade deadline, they brought in Hines from the Colts, and it was a kind of a cheap deal. But it was commonly known by all accounts that they reached out trying to make a deal with the Giants for Saquon Barkley. And I know it's easy for them to say because Barkley's had a great season, but imagine you had Barkley in that team with the season he's had. Like, can you imagine the difference in which they'd have offensively throughout the course of the games? Because it wouldn't be all on that. Yeah, and I'm showing Barkley there because obviously he's their player, and they tried to make a push to get him, and potentially they still might get a push to get him because there's no guarantees he's going to be back with the Giants. But even if you took I know he broke his ankle last night, Tony Pollard. If you had a player like that in the team, it would make such a difference to that team. And ultimately, last night, when you have Mixon, you have Peener that can do all that work for you. And I know they're not the most consistent of running backs, but as Colin rightly called out earlier, they still have enough there to, even with a combined 1-2 punch, to take so much pressure off the Bengals. And the Bengals will need that again this Sunday when they go into Arrowhead. So I wouldn't say they're a running back away from being in the Super Bowl because they're such a great team, but it's just about a balanced offense for me.
So I'm not going to ask any more questions about that game because I think we should move on to the last game, which was very interesting. And Cowboys done what Cowboys done. There was that epic meltdown. So it was another year where the Cowboys will likely feel it was the one that got away yet again, holding the Niners to just 19 points, 4 field goals and a touchdown in the second half. Dak Prescott throws 2 interceptions at critical times, resulting in 2 field goals. Brock Purdy with 2 nice drives in the second half to put this game away. And I think what's really interesting is, again, it just goes to show how the team is built around Brock Purdy, and Kyle Shanahan protects him. I don't think we've seen that stunner that we've seen the last few weeks last night, but they still got the job done. Brian, what was your thoughts on the game?
If I was a Cowboys fan today, I'd be absolutely sick as a pig. Like where my team got completely hosed. The Cowboys, you touched on there, they feel this one is one that got away. Absolutely. Like they held it. I know they haven't been the most explosive of offense with Brock Purdy, but they held them to 19 points at home. Their defense was very dominant in the game. You've got a scenario where Dak Prescott has thrown 2 interceptions. Whatever about the first one. The first one is in his own half. The defense still held their own and kept it to a field goal. But the second one, and Mike McCarthy's the one. He's not the fall guy because Jerry Jones has already come out and said he's not going to be fired. But he's not the fall guy here. The offensive coordinator should be the fall guy because his play calling throughout the game baffled me. I mean, Pollard breaks his. He goes off injured. At that stage, we didn't know how serious the injury looked like. It was just a high ankle sprain. And he didn't change the run game to kind of accommodate the fact that Pollard was gone. He was looking for an outside perimeter run from Zeke Elliott throughout the course of the game. Those days are gone with Zeke Elliott. He's the bell cow to get you the extra 2 or 3 yards when you need a first down. But he didn't move away from that. When they were driving towards half time, I thought the play calling there was a bit bizarre. It's 2nd and 2. He goes for a throw instead of running the ball and trying to get a first down, which allows the clock to continue to move. So worst case scenario, if you don't score, you're not giving the ball back to the 49ers before half time. And worst case, you take the field goal and you go in at half time leading and you have a bit of momentum and you're getting the ball at the start of the second half. Instead, he calls a kind of a crosser route throw. And I know obviously the player has to make the catch, and Fred Warner came up with a great play on the deflection. But why put yourself in that position? Because if you run it on the 2nd 2 and you get the first down, then you have a situation where the 49ers potentially have to call a timeout if they want to get the ball back, which then means the likelihood of them being able to go down the field and get the field goal, which they nearly didn't get with Brock Purdy, and there's 1 second left on the clock when he managed to get the ball out of bounds. I just thought for a team that has so much potential, I think it's a disappointing end of a season when a game I thought the Cowboys really should have won. I didn't think the 49ers played at the level we've seen this season. Defensively, of course they're going to play well because they're such a great unit. But again, just Dak has had so many turnovers, and we spoke about Dak seemed to have corrected that last week in the playoffs, and I felt maybe that we turned the corner and what we saw towards the end of the season was more of a bit of inconsistency. We would have seen a better stat class and didn't materialise. And I think gradually as the game went on, the 49ers wore the Cowboys down. I mean, look at McCaffrey's numbers. He didn't even go over 50 yards in rushing. He had the touchdown. But they relied on Mitchell at the end to get them over the line with the run game as opposed to bringing McCaffrey in. If I was an Eagles fan, I wouldn't have watched that game last night and be really nervous about playing the 49ers this weekend. Probably been a bit disingenuous because they are the two best teams, but I think the Eagles should be clear favourites for this game at the weekend.
I think what's really interesting is that when you look at the Dallas, you always know that it's not just about history for them. Jerry Jones is big about his Super Bowls. He is all about Super Bowl. That's what he wants. And we're going to get to all these questions that are coming in comments because I think there's some really valid ones here. I'm dying to get your thoughts on it for sure, especially about Dak and his future within that team, within the league. Colum, how did you find this game? Because you weren't covering the Twitter. You had the time off to be able to sit down, watch it and really take it in.
I felt, I suppose, look, the best team won, but the Cowboys had opportunities, and Brian has covered off a lot of the points. Dak didn't have a good game. He'd had a good game the previous week, but the Zeke, I think Zeke averaged 2.6 yards a carry. I mean, it's so far removed from the Zeke that we obviously saw in his rookie year. And you go back, and I know Fred talks about the Dak contract, but the Zeke contract is just, and when they gave Zeke the contract as well, and when it kicked in, this was for the Niners. This was running into a real defense, and now they overcame it. That was the important thing. But I think in their previous 4 games, they'd scored 30 or more points and then ran into a Cowboys defense that is serious business. But like you look at, say, and this is, we were just having the talk, I suppose, about the Bills and about contracts and the way it works, right? You look at what the Eagles have done in terms of putting weapons around Jalen Hurts. And this is a Cowboys team that had to let Amari Cooper go. And that, I suppose, is something that, that's the problem. When those big contracts begin to kick in, and then you have to make changes, and you have to make sacrifices somewhere. And ultimately that kind of cost them because, if they, CeeDee Lamb, he's good. I would kind of put him in that kind of Mike Williams type of category of maybe not elite, but he's good. But after that, I mean, the fall off was enormous. And I don't know if either of you saw it. You also saw it on the sideline. The play, and Dan Orlovsky did a piece on it today around Dak and the Cowboys not understanding where the pressure was coming from. And there was one point where he, threw right at CeeDee Lamb with Fred Warner, but the touchdown was there if he'd gone to T.Y. And that's an issue. So there are, I mean, Dak, there are issues there, right? In terms of, I think he is another QB who's trying a little bit too hard. But like you had Jerry Jones giving the kicker a pep talk before, but equally you saw some gamesmanship for the 49ers. I don't know if people saw that video. They weren't allowing him to warm up. And I thought, like, go back, if that had been the 90s kind of Cowboys team, they would have been a pylon at that point. And I think that is a thing. Or if the Cowboys had done that to the 49ers, I guarantee there would have been a pylon. If that had been the Chiefs, so I think the Cowboys have to really look at things. Brian has said, Jerry says Mike McCarthy's job is safe, and I think given what he's done, that probably makes sense. It doesn't make sense to me to move on from him, but they certainly need to make tweaks. They really can't do anything about Zeke's contract. They can't do anything about Dak's contract, so they need to find some weapons to put around it. And I feel awful for Tony Pollard to be just about to hit free agency. He's been, kind of the unenviable task of being really good, but because Jerry Jones is obsessed with Zeke not getting the recognition in Dallas, he's about to hit free agency, he's about to get paid. I really hope that he can bounce back quickly from the injury and that he gets a decent contract.
Yeah, I was just going to make a point about Pollard because throughout the course of the season, many Cowboys fans and even us on the show have spoke about he really should be the number one running back there. And whether it's the pressure coming from up above, as Colum has alluded to with Jerry, that no, let's continue with Zeke, and kind of a justification in the money in which they paid Zeke, as opposed to picking the right player. But this season, I think they've transitioned really effectively into making Pollard the number one running back, and that's what was disappointing because you hear about in-game adjustments by defenses at half time, and like the Bengals defense coordinator does it all season long and comes out in the second half, adjust to the situation. There was no adjustment to the situation last night when Pollard went out. It was like, that's the playbook and we'll just run that playbook. But that's only going to work if you have the right players on the field. If Pollard's not on the field, you have to have an alternative. Just like if a team loses out on a wide receiver to injury, they find other ways of adapting and calling particular plays that's going to suit the players on the field. They didn't seem to do anything like that. It was like, we'll continue doing what we are. And I just want to call out the Kittle catch because as much as the 49ers were effective on, to me that was the deciding play in a way, because they seemed to be stumbling, they couldn't move the ball. The Niners, I mean, they weren't very effective in moving the ball for large parts of the game, and then that play was just kind of it was like a momentum change, a big swing, and obviously within that drive they got a flag then on a hold on Kittle, in the red zone, which allowed them to score the touchdown. That was a huge play. If the Niners go on to win the Super Bowl, we have all these plays, and Colum always calls out these legacy plays in Super Bowls, but you look back at plays during the season, that will be the play that got them the momentum swing to win this game, and it'll probably go down in one of the history books if it turns out to be a Niners season to look back on. Great play with Kittle, how he held on to it and how he got it. I'm not sure what he did.
I think we need to touch on this because, Fred is a long-time Dallas supporter. I actually spoke with him about this over the weekend as well. Is Dak actually salvageable, guys, in your own thoughts?
Oh, look, it's the problem is if you look at the contracts around the league now, I think there's 9 quarterbacks we saw last night on social that are in the 40 million bracket, and it never changes. It's just like it's a rolling thing. The next president's up, obviously, Deshaun Watson changed the scale on that there in the offseason with the guaranteed contract, but obviously we're talking about players at certain levels. The Cowboys were in a kind of a difficult situation because Dak had broke his leg the previous season. They weren't sure how he was going to come back. There was the franchise tag, and he got the contract. But it's like what Colum said earlier on when we were discussing the Josh Allen situation. That's only going to work if you have the right players around you that can really step up and make the grade to make that quarterback even better. And like when you got CeeDee Lamb, and as good as he is, for me he's a 2 receiver as opposed to a 1. And so they haven't put the right players around them. I like Dak. I think he's a good quarterback, but I mean, last night was a big opportunity for him. If he hadn't won that game last night, he's moving up to another level. And like the Cowboys are kind of at a standstill. They keep hitting the divisional round, but they can't get beyond that. And we see that time and time again with teams. They just can't seem to get over the line, no matter who the quarterback is.
Colum, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think Dallas will actually retain Dak? Do you think he can be saved? Do you think there's a way they can build a team around him? Do you think he's going to be at the Broncos next year? Tell me.
Well, the Cowboys are in a similar situation to the Russell Wilson situation in that he is there. He's definitely there. The dead cap would be 90 million if you try to move off of him. But the cap hits for the next couple of years are the issue. Like he's 50 million against the cap in 2023, and he's 52 million against the cap in 2024. Now the dead cap in 2024 is 40 million, so you could save, I suppose, 12 million there if he weren't to perform next year. But I think Dak's an interesting one because I think I can understand Cowboys fans' frustrations in ways, but I think part of it is done by the media because a lot of the media guys are just obsessed with Dak and refuse to kind of acknowledge that he makes mistakes. Like if you had a QB who threw as many interceptions than other QBs as Dak did, they would rightly get criticism, but Dak is kind of immune to it. And even last night, it was like after the Cowboys lost, like there was this mourning and this unwillingness and like people kind of refusing to acknowledge that Dak had a part to play in all of that. So I think it's somewhere in the middle. I don't think he's anywhere near as good as he's made out to be in the media, and I don't think he's nearly as bad as some Cowboys fans would have you believe. They have overpaid. It's what goes back to what Brian said. Like they've overpaid for a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. He's a guy who clearly the guys in the locker room respect and respond to, but he's not in the top tier. And I think we will discuss this, I'm sure, more in the divisional preview and in our live show in Captain America's. I think now, realistically, we're in a league where Mahomes and Burrow are 1 and 2, and then there's a gap to the next group. And so that is what you're competing against. But when you are paying guys elite level money, then how do you put the pieces around them? So it is a big issue for the Cowboys, but it's not just the Dak contract, it's the Zeke contract. And that is, to me, where they're really caught.
Like, there's no way Zeke can be on that team next year. And it probably seems a bit of a stretch to be saying that so early in the offseason when we're not even at the offseason, the season's still on. But obviously, the Cowboys will do their evaluation over the next 2 weeks. And I mean, you look at the numbers next year, Zeke is eating another 12-15% of the pie. And for what? Like, it's not sustainable because you're not getting the production from him. And they just have to make a hard call and take some dead money. But, I mean, what do? You pay the $15 million, for example, and carry a player who's not really going to be as effective, or do you just, let it go and just take $6 or $7 million of a dead cap? He, for me, is the one that needs to go. And they need to make sure to keep Pollard. And maybe Pollard's situation will change now as Colum's rightly called out the fact that he's now going to have a severe injury to get over. I think the easiest thing and safest thing will be for his agent to work out a deal with the Cowboys and have him go back to it, which I'm sure he wants to do anyway. I'm sure he wants to maintain his career with the Cowboys. Why wouldn't he? He's been really good for them. But for me, Zeke has to go.
The problem, Brian, is the dead cap hit on Zeke is so big. Like, essentially, the dead cap hit from what I've seen is around about 12 million next year. So this is the situation that they have put themselves in. And that is the crazy part of it, like they gave Zeke this enormous contract when he signed it. So they could move off Zeke, they could, but they would be eating a huge amount of dead cap.
You might get a scenario where they trade him and they absorb $6 million and the other team picks up the $6 million. But then who's going to make a trade for Zeke? Bearing in mind what they've seen on the field from over the past 2 years. Maybe Buffalo might. No, but like someone might think if you get him in their offense as a second running back, he might be very effective. We'll see.
He might be in Carolina later on next year. You never know. I just don't even know anymore. It's just been one of those weeks where it's been crazy football. Brian, you were the ultimate winner this week. You had all games pegged. Congratulations. Mark is not here to take the piss out of you, but I'm saying congratulations. Although I did think you were flip-flopping and you did go to the Giants, because when I was making the picks,
no, I didn't.
You had to correct it.
No, watch
Almost
the show.
certain.
Watch the shots. That's 10 for 10 in the playoffs. I'm on for it. If only the regular season was playoff picks, I'd be fine.
Don't forget that the team is on the road this week. We are doing a live show from our sponsor, Point Bets, this week on Thursday night in their office. And then, Brian, where are we going to be on Friday?
Oh, Colum can't wait for Friday. He gets to spend a bit of quality time with me again. We're in Captain America's Friday night. I don't think there's many tickets left, Khristina. I think it's only a handful. 3, if I'm right. 2.
3 tickets still.
I'd imagine them tickets will go by Friday. If not, we'll have to invite some VIPs in to manage those good seats at the front. Yeah, look, I'm looking forward to Friday night. It's been a while since we've done a live show together, and there'll be a lot to talk about. We'll have to have a chat with Mark when he returns from his nice trip out in Santa Clara. But 2 really good games to preview this weekend, and obviously we're going to get into some off-season stuff now that kind of it's dwindling now in terms of how many teams are left. But a couple of tickets left. Captain America's Eventbrite. Maybe we'll put up I'm sure we'll be pushing it throughout the course of the week.
Of course we will. Of course we will. And just a reminder, based on the fact that we are going to be on the road, there will be no live show on Friday night streamed onto YouTube at that particular time at 9 o'clock. However, everyone will be back with their own thoughts and comments for sure over the next few days on the playoff games this Sunday coming, which no doubt will be amazing. Brian, you were going to say something.
The PointsBet show on Thursday will air at the weekend. We haven't agreed what time it's going to go out at, but we have some really good guests coming onto that show, so it is worth saying. And obviously then people get to figure out who we're picking. I have a funny feeling I know who Colum's picking already, but it'll be interesting to see come the weekend. But no, that show will be aired at the weekend.
Cool. So from all of us today, remember, if you see Mark and you know that he's alive and he's wearing a Pats jersey, not a 49ers jersey, get in touch with Pats Nation. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you guys soon.